Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to stumble upon a secret that the world had forgotten for over 1,000 years? To round a corner in a narrow canyon, your footsteps echoing against walls of stone, only to find yourself face to face with something so magnificent, so impossible, that your mind struggles to comprehend what your eyes are seeing? This is the story of Petra, not just any ancient city, but perhaps the most breathtaking testament to human ingenuity ever carved from living rock. A place where the very mountains became temples, where water flowed through channels cut by hands that lived 2 millennia ago, where an entire civilization chose to write their legacy not on paper or clay, but in the eternal language of stone itself. Picture this moment with me, if you will. The year is 1812. The morning sun casts long shadows across the desert landscape of southern Jordan, painting the sandstone cliffs in shades of amber and gold. A young Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt pulls his robes tighter around his shoulders, the fabric dusty from weeks of travel through this harsh, beautiful wilderness that he's not here by accident, you see. Burckhardt has heard whispers, stories told around campfires, fragments of tales that speak of ruins hidden deep in the mountains. The local Bedouin tribes guard their secrets carefully, and for good reason. This land has seen empires rise and fall, has witnessed the passage of caravans heavy with frankincense and silk, has felt the footsteps of prophets and kings, but Burckhardt is persistent, as explorers often are. He's learned Arabic, adopted local customs, even taken the name Sheikh Ibrahim ibn Abdullah. He moves through this world not as a foreign intruder, but as someone who has earned, slowly and carefully, the right to see what lies hidden in these ancient stones. The path he follows. It's barely a path at all, really. More like a crack in the earth, a narrow passage between towering walls of rock that seem to close in overhead, blocking out all but a thin ribbon of desert sky. The Bedouins call this place the Sick, a word that means, simply, shaft. But there's nothing simple about what lies ahead. As Burckhardt walks deeper into this natural corridor, his footsteps become softer, more reverent. The walls around him tell stories in stone, layers upon layers of geological time, each striation a chapter in the Earth's long memory. Pink sandstone gives way to deeper reds, then to purples and golds, as if the very rock is alive with color, responding to the play of light and shadow. The silence here, he would later write in his journal, is not empty. It feels expectant. And then, after what feels like hours but is perhaps only minutes, the narrow passage begins to widen. Light grows brighter ahead. Burckhardt quickens his pace, his heart beating faster with each step. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to become the first Western eyes to witness something extraordinary. The Sick opens suddenly, dramatically, like curtains being drawn back on the greatest stage ever conceived. And there, carved directly into the rose-red cliff face, stands something that defies belief. A facade so massive, so intricate, so impossibly perfect that it seems to belong more to dreams than to waking reality. The Treasury, Al-Khazneh in Arabic, rises nearly 40 meters into the air, its Corinthian columns and elaborate friezes carved with a precision that would challenge modern tools. But this isn't construction as we know it. This is sculpture on an impossible scale. Someone, sometime in the distant past, looked at a solid wall of rock and saw not an obstacle, but an opportunity to create something eternal. Burckhardt stands in silence, his mouth slightly open, trying to process what he's seeing. The morning light catches the pink sandstone just so, and the entire facade seems to glow from within, as if lit by some internal fire. Every detail is perfect, every column, every capital, every carved flower and geometric pattern. And yet, this is only the beginning. As his eyes adjust to the scene before him, Burckhardt begins to notice other facades, other doorways carved into the surrounding cliffs. Dozens of them, hundreds. An entire city hollowed out of living rock, spreading in all directions through valleys and hillsides he hadn't even noticed at first. This is Petra, the rose-red city, half as old as time itself. But who were these people? These master craftsmen who chose to carve their homes and temples directly from the mountains? What drove them to undertake such an impossible task? And perhaps most mysteriously of all, why did they disappear, leaving their magnificent city to be reclaimed by silence and sand. To understand Petra, we must journey back much further than Burckhardt's discovery. We must travel nearly 2,500 years into the past, to a time when this harsh desert landscape was anything but empty. A time when the sound of chisels on stone rang through these valleys from dawn to dusk, when the channels cut into the rock carried not just water, but the lifeblood of an entire civilization. The people who built Petra, they weren't just architects or engineers, though they were certainly both of those things. They were dreamers on an impossible scale. They looked at these forbidding cliffs and saw not barriers, but blank canvases waiting to be transformed into something magnificent. They called themselves the Nabataeans, and they understood something about permanence that we, in our world of steel and glass and planned obsolescence, have perhaps forgotten. They built not for decades or even centuries, but for millennia. They built in stone because stone remembers. Stone endures. Stone tells stories that outlast empires. Picture the first Nabataean who stood where Burckhardt would stand 2,000 years later. Perhaps it was a merchant seeking shelter from a sandstorm. Perhaps it was a nomad following ancient paths between watering holes. Whoever it was, they looked at these rose-red cliffs and saw something we can barely imagine. Potential. Not the potential for a building or two, but for an entire city. A place where caravans could rest safely, where water could be stored and channeled, where the very mountains could be transformed into palaces and temples and homes. A place that would become so magnificent that travelers would journey from across the known world just to witness it. But this transformation didn't happen overnight. Oh no, Petra was carved slowly, lovingly, over generations. Fathers passed down to sons not just the techniques of stone carving, but the vision itself. The dream of a city that would last forever. Imagine the first chisel striking stone. The ring of metal on rock echoing through valleys that had known only the calls of birds and the whisper of wind through narrow passages. That first strike was an act of faith that this impossible dream could become reality. The Nabataeans were patient people. They had to be. Each facade you see in Petra, each doorway, each column, each decorative element, was carved by hand, one chip of stone at a time. A single elaborate tomb might take years to complete. The great temples and monuments we marvel at today represent decades or even centuries of continuous work, but they were not working alone, these ancient craftsmen. The desert itself was their partner in this grand endeavor. The sandstone of Petra is soft enough to carve when first exposed to air, but it hardens with time and weathering, becoming more durable with each passing year. It's as if the rock itself wanted to be transformed, was waiting for skilled hands to reveal the beauty hidden within. And the colors. Oh, the colors. Petra isn't just rose-red, despite what the poets tell us. Depending on the time of day, the angle of the sun, the particular vein of rock being revealed, the stone can be pink or gold, orange or purple, deep crimson or pale cream. It's a living canvas that changes with the light, ensuring that no two visitors to Petra ever see exactly the same city. The Nabataeans understood this. They timed their ceremonies, their festivals, their daily prayers to take advantage of these shifting colors. Dawn prayers in the soft pink light, noon gatherings when the sun struck the facades directly, revealing every carved detail in sharp relief. Evening celebrations as the stone glowed like embers in the dying light. But Petra was never just about beauty, remarkable as that beauty is. This was a practical city, built by practical people who happened to possess an extraordinary aesthetic sense. Every carved facade hides chambers that served specific purposes, tombs for the honored dead, meeting halls for merchants and officials, storage rooms for grain and precious goods, cisterns for the careful collection and preservation of water. In a desert, water is more precious than gold, more valuable than the finest silk or frankincense. The Nabataeans understood this absolutely. They developed a system of water collection and storage that modern engineers study with admiration and, perhaps, a touch of envy. Rain, when it comes to this desert, comes hard and fast. Flash floods roar through the wadis, carrying away anything in their path. Most desert peoples simply endure these extremes: drought and flood, scarcity and waste. But the Nabataeans saw opportunity where others saw only hardship. They carved channels directly into the rock faces, creating a network of gutters and pipes that could capture every precious drop of rainwater and guide it into massive underground cisterns. Some of these cisterns could hold thousands of gallons, enough to sustain the city through months of drought. But even more remarkably, they learned to control the flow itself. During flash floods, their system could divert the rushing water away from the city, protecting the carved facades and underground chambers. In times of gentler rain, every drop was captured and stored. It was engineering on a scale and sophistication that wouldn't be seen again in this region for over 1,000 years. Walking through Petra today, you can still see these channels, still trace the flow of water through passages carved by hands that turned to dust millennia ago. Sometimes, during rare desert rains, the system still works. Water still flows along paths planned by architects who understood that true civilization isn't built on conquest or wealth, but on the careful stewardship of precious resources. The Nabataeans knew something else that we're still learning, that the most lasting monuments are those carved in harmony with the natural world, not in defiance of it. They didn't try to impose their vision on the landscape. Instead, they worked with the stone, with the natural fractures and formations, allowing the rock itself to suggest the final form. This is why each facade in Petra is unique. Oh, they share common elements. The classical columns borrowed from Greek and Roman architecture, the geometric patterns that speak of Arabian influences, the intricate friezes that tell stories in stone. But each one grew organically from its particular cliff face, shaped by the characteristics of that specific rock formation. Think about that for a moment. In our modern world, we value consistency, predictability. We want our buildings to look the same whether they're in New York or Dubai or Sydney. But the Nabataeans embraced uniqueness. Every tomb, every temple, every dwelling was a conversation between human creativity and the particular stone from which it emerged, and they were international in a way that seems almost modern. Petra sat at the crossroads of ancient trade routes, the paths that connected Arabia to the Mediterranean, India to Europe, the far reaches of China to the markets of Rome. The Nabataeans welcomed traders from every corner of the known world, and their city became a cosmopolitan center where ideas and art forms mixed and merged. You can see this in their architecture. Classical Greek columns stand beside Arabian arches. Roman engineering techniques are combined with distinctly Nabataean innovations. Egyptian influences blend seamlessly with Persian motifs. Petra became a visual encyclopedia of ancient architectural styles, all unified by the distinctive rose-red stone and the extraordinary skill of the craftsmen who carved it. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Petra isn't what we can see, but what remains hidden. Archaeological surveys suggest that only about 15% of the city has been excavated or fully explored. The rest lies waiting beneath centuries of sand and rubble, its secrets intact. What might we find in those unopened chambers? What stories might be written on scrolls of papyrus or carved into walls that haven't seen light for 2,000 years? What treasures, not just of gold or precious stones, but of knowledge, of art, of human achievement, still wait to be discovered? Recent excavations have yielded tantalizing glimpses. Frescoes with colors as vivid as the day they were painted. Pottery so finely crafted it seems to glow in candlelight. Jewelry that combines techniques and materials from across the ancient world. And inscriptions, hundreds of inscriptions in multiple languages, each one a window into daily life in this remarkable city. But here's what strikes me most about these discoveries. They're not just evidence of wealth or power, though Petra certainly had both. They're evidence of something rarer and more precious, a civilization that valued beauty for its own sake, that believed their daily lives should be surrounded by art and craftsmanship of the highest quality. The humblest dwelling in Petra shows evidence of decorative carving. The simplest tomb includes aesthetic elements that serve no practical purpose except to please the eye. Even the water channels, these purely functional elements, were carved with a grace and elegance that transforms utilitarian engineering into sculpture. The Nabataeans understood something we sometimes forget in our hurried modern world, that we are shaped by our surroundings, that beauty has the power to elevate the human spirit, that the effort to create something magnificent is never wasted, even if the immediate practical benefit is unclear. And so we return to Burckhardt, standing in that first moment of discovery, trying to comprehend what his eyes are showing him. He doesn't know the full story yet. How could he? The systematic exploration of Petra will take decades, and new discoveries are still being made today, more than 2 centuries after his first glimpse through the sick. But in that moment, he understands something profound. He's not just looking at ancient architecture. He's witnessing a testament to the human capacity to dream impossible dreams, and then, through patience and skill and sheer stubborn determination, make them real. I feel, he writes in his journal that night, as if I have discovered not just a city, but a lost chord in the song of human achievement. These people, whoever they were, understood something about permanence, about beauty, about the relationship between human creativity and the natural world, that we have somehow forgotten. He's right, of course, but he's also wrong about one crucial thing. The Nabataeans haven't disappeared entirely. Their blood flows in the veins of the Bedouin tribes who still move through these desert landscapes. Their knowledge lives on in traditional building techniques still used throughout Jordan. Their understanding of water management influences modern desert agriculture, and their greatest creation, their rose-red city carved from living stone, continues to teach anyone willing to learn about patience, about craftsmanship, about the courage required to undertake projects that will take generations to complete, about the deep satisfaction that comes from working in harmony with the natural world rather than in opposition to it. I think this is why Petra continues to captivate us, why millions of visitors make the pilgrimage to walk through the sick and experience that same moment of revelation that Burckhardt felt. It's not just the visual spectacle, remarkable as that is. It's the recognition of something we've lost, the willingness to invest in projects whose completion we ourselves might never see. The understanding that true achievement is measured not in years or decades, but in centuries. The Nabataeans were building for eternity, and in the rose-red stone of Petra, they achieved it. Tomorrow, we'll journey deeper into this ancient world. We'll meet the people who conceived and built this impossible city, learn how they transformed a harsh desert crossroads into one of the wonders of the ancient world. We'll discover how Petra became not just a city, but the beating heart of a trade network that spanned continents. But tonight, I invite you to dream of rose-red stone warming in morning sunlight, of narrow passages that open suddenly onto breathtaking vistas, of the sound of chisels on rock, echoing through valleys where craftsmen labored with infinite patience to create something that would outlast empires. Dream of Petra as it was in its glory days, not ruins reclaimed by sand and silence, but a living city where water flowed through carved channels, where merchants from distant lands gathered in the shadow of temples carved from the living rock, where the very stones seemed to glow with an inner light that spoke of human dreams made manifest. For in those dreams, Petra lives still, not as a monument to the past, but as an inspiration for the future, a reminder that we too can choose to build for eternity, to create beauty that will endure long after our own voices have joined the great silence that surrounds all human endeavor. The rose-red city waits, patient as stone, ready to share its secrets with those who approach with open hearts and minds ready to wonder, what stories will it tell us next? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the first light of dawn breaking over an endless sea of sand. The air is still cool from the desert night, carrying with it the faint scent of frankincense and myrrh, precious resins that have traveled thousands of miles to reach this place. In the distance, barely visible through the morning haze, a caravan approaches, dozens of camels moving in single file, their bells creating a rhythm as old as trade itself. This is how Petra began, not as a grand architectural vision, but as something far more humble and infinitely more practical. A place where weary travelers could find water, shelter, and safety in the vast emptiness of the Arabian desert. The year is somewhere around the 4th century before Christ. The great empires of the ancient world, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, are shadows of their former selves. Alexander the Great has conquered most of the known world and died young, leaving his vast empire to fragment into competing kingdoms. It's a time of uncertainty, of shifting alliances, of opportunities for those bold enough to seize them. And in the desert, a remarkable people are about to do exactly that, the Nabataeans. Even their name carries mystery. Some scholars believe it comes from Nabatu, meaning to excavate, in ancient Aramaic. How fitting for people who would become master carvers of stone. Others trace it to Nabataeans, a name mentioned in ancient texts as the eldest son of Ishmael. Perhaps both stories are true. Perhaps neither matters as much as what these people accomplished. Picture them as they might have appeared to that first caravan master, approaching their camp somewhere in the rocky wilderness that would one day become Petra. Not the wealthy merchants they would later become, but nomads, lean, weathered by sun and wind, their eyes holding the special knowledge that comes only to those who have learned to read the subtle signs of the desert. They moved with the seasons, following ancient paths known only to them, paths that connected the incense gardens of southern Arabia to the great markets of Damascus and Gaza. They knew where water could be found in this seemingly waterless land. They understood the moods of the desert, could predict sandstorms days before they arrived, knew which wadis would run with flash floods and which would remain dry. But more than that, they possessed something rarer than water in the desert. They had vision. Ahmed, says an elder to his nephew, as they sit beside their small fire under a canopy of stars more brilliant than any city dweller will ever see. The young man looks up from the piece of soft sandstone he's been carving. Just a small thing. A decorative cup perhaps, but already showing the skill that will one day transform mountains. Ahmed, what do you see when you look at those cliffs? The young man follows his uncle's gaze to the rose-red walls that surround their camp. Stone, uncle. Beautiful stone, but just stone. The elder nods, but his eyes hold a different kind of knowledge. I see doors, nephew. I see chambers where merchants can store their precious goods safely. I see channels where rainwater can be captured and held. I see a city. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? A nomadic people, with no tradition of permanent settlement, dreaming of carving an entire city from solid rock. But the Nabataeans had something that made the impossible merely difficult. They understood the value of patience. They had been watching the great trade routes for generations. They knew that the merchants who carried frankincense and myrrh, silk and spices, cinnamon and precious stones, these men faced a constant problem. The desert journey between the incense gardens of Hadramaut and the markets of the Mediterranean was long and treacherous. Bandits lurked in the mountain passes. Sandstorms could bury entire caravans. And always, there was the question of water. Most desert tribes simply raided these caravans, taking what they could and moving on. But the Nabataeans, they thought differently. Instead of taking wealth, why not help create it? Instead of raiding caravans, why not protect them? And instead of moving constantly, why not create a place so valuable that people would come to them? You see, the Nabataeans understood something about economics that wouldn't be formally theorized for another 2,000 years. They understood that the real wealth wasn't in the goods themselves, but in controlling the places where those goods had to pass. They were about to invent what we might call the world's first service economy. But first, they had to solve the fundamental problem of the desert: water. This is where their true genius lay. Other people saw the harsh landscape around Petra and moved on, seeking easier places to settle. The Nabataeans looked at the same landscape and saw an elaborate water collection system waiting to be built. Picture this: the rare but violent rainstorms that occasionally sweep across this desert. Most of the precious water rushes uselessly through the wadis and disappears into the sand. But what if you could capture it? What if you could carve channels directly into the cliff faces, creating an elaborate network of gutters and pipes that would guide every drop into carefully constructed cisterns? It was an engineering challenge that would daunt modern hydraulic engineers. But the Nabataeans had time, generations of time, and they had something more valuable than any technology. They had the willingness to begin a project knowing that their great-grandchildren would be the ones to see it completed. The first cuts into the rock were small, tentative. A channel here, a storage chamber there. But as the years passed, as success bred greater ambition, the scope of their vision expanded. They began to understand that they weren't just creating a water system. They were creating the foundation for something unprecedented. Father, says a young woman named Shakolat, watching the men work at carving a new cistern. The name means beautiful in their language, and she will grow up to be mentioned in ancient texts as one of the great queens of Petra. But for now, she's just a curious child, fascinated by the transformation happening around her. Father, Why do we work so hard on these? Holes in the ground. We're nomads. We move with the seasons. Her father sets down his bronze chisel, bronze, because iron is still precious and hard to come by. His hands are stained with the characteristic pink dust of Petra's sandstone. We were nomads, little flower. But the world is changing. The old ways. They're not enough anymore. Look at the merchants who pass through our territory. They're desperate for safe passage, for reliable water, for secure storage. They have wealth beyond imagining, but they're vulnerable out here. What if we could offer them something no one else can? Not just passage, but partnership? The little girl doesn't fully understand yet, but she's absorbing something crucial. The understanding that true strength comes not from taking what others have built, but from creating something so valuable that others will pay for the privilege of using it. This shift in thinking from nomadic raiders to sedentary service providers represented one of the great transformations in human history. The Nabataeans were inventing a new kind of civilization, one based not on agriculture like Egypt or Mesopotamia, not on conquest like Rome, but on their ability to facilitate trade across the most challenging terrain in the known world. And at the heart of this transformation was their growing mastery of stone carving. It began, as all great skills do, with necessity. They needed cisterns to store water, so they learned to hollow out chambers in the soft sandstone. They needed secure storage for trade goods, so they learned to carve rooms deep into the cliff faces where no bandit could reach them. They needed places of worship, so they began to create spaces where their gods could dwell in eternal stone. But somewhere along the way, necessity became art. Have you ever watched a master craftsman at work? The way their hands seem to know exactly where to place the tool, how much pressure to apply, when to pause and study their progress. The Nabataeans developed this mastery over generations, each father passing to his son not just the techniques, but the eye, the ability to look at raw stone and see the finished form hidden within, and they had the perfect medium to work with. The sandstone around Petra is a sculptor's dream, soft enough to carve when freshly exposed, but hardening with time and weather into something nearly as durable as granite. It's as if the earth itself wanted to be transformed into art. Steady, O Bodas, the master carver says to his young apprentice. Let the stone guide you. Don't force it. The column is already there, inside the rock. We're just revealing it. The boy, who will grow up to become one of the great kings of Petra, though he doesn't know it yet, adjusts his grip on the chisel. The work is painstaking, each strike carefully considered. A mistake here could ruin months of labor. But gradually, miraculously, a fluted column begins to emerge from what had been solid stone just hours before. Master, the boy asks during a brief rest, why do we make them so beautiful? The columns, I mean. They would hold up the roof just as well if they were plain. The old man considers this, wiping pink dust from his weathered hands. Would they, young one? Would they really? A plain column holds up a roof, yes. But a beautiful column holds up the spirit. It reminds everyone who sees it that we are more than just traders and water carriers. We are people who believe that our work should reflect the best of what humans can achieve. This philosophy, that utilitarian objects should also be beautiful, that daily life should be surrounded by art, would become one of the defining characteristics of Nabataean culture. Every water channel they carved included decorative elements. Every tomb, no matter how humble, showed evidence of aesthetic consideration. Even their coins, when they finally began minting them, were small masterpieces of design. But there was something else driving their artistic development, something that speaks to the very heart of what Petra would become. The Nabataeans were not just creating a city for themselves. They were creating a showcase, a place that would demonstrate their sophistication to the merchants and dignitaries who would visit from across the known world. You see, they understood something about psychology that modern marketers would recognize immediately, that people are more likely to trust and do business with those who demonstrate cultural refinement. A crude desert camp might offer the same services as Petra, but it wouldn't inspire the same confidence. It wouldn't suggest the same level of competence and reliability. Imagine being a merchant from Alexandria, traveling with a fortune in precious goods. You've heard stories of desert bandits, of caravans that simply vanish into the endless sand. And then, after weeks of difficult travel, you round a corner and find yourself facing the Treasury, That magnificent facade rising 40 meters into the air. Every detail carved with impossible precision. What does this tell you about the people who built it? It tells you that they have the patience for long-term projects, the skill to execute complex plans, the organizational ability to coordinate hundreds of craftsmen over multiple generations, the wealth and security to invest in purely aesthetic improvements. In other words, it tells you that these are people you can trust with your most precious cargo. This is why the Nabataeans invested so heavily in architectural magnificence. Every carved facade was an advertisement, every elaborate tomb a business card carved in eternal stone. They were creating not just a city, but a brand, the Petra brand, which stood for reliability, sophistication, and unparalleled service in the dangerous business of desert trade. And it worked. Oh, how it worked. By the 2nd century before Christ, Petra had become the beating heart of the ancient world's luxury trade. Caravans from southern Arabia would rest here, their camels drinking from Nabataean cisterns, their goods stored in chambers carved deep into the rose-red cliffs. Northern traders would meet them here, bringing silk from China, gems from India, precious metals from as far away as Britain. The variety of goods that passed through Petra was staggering. Frankincense, of course, that precious resin that was worth more than its weight in gold, essential for religious ceremonies across the Mediterranean. Myrrh, prized both for its use in perfumes and for its medicinal properties. Cinnamon and other exotic spices that could transform the most mundane meal into a feast. But also stranger things. Rhinoceros horn from Africa, believed to possess magical properties. Pearls from the Persian Gulf, each one a small fortune. Silk so fine it seemed to be woven from light itself. Jade from distant China, carved into shapes that represented dreams and philosophies the Nabataeans couldn't even pronounce. Salam alaikum, friend, says Aretas, a common name among Nabataean kings, meaning virtue in their language. He's greeting a caravan master from Damascus, a man whose camels are loaded with goods from the north. And peace to you, the merchant replies, his eyes already taking in the magnificent facades that surround them. I must say, each time I visit Petra, it seems to have grown more beautiful. Aretas smiles with pride. Beauty and prosperity walk hand in hand, my friend. Our artisans have been busy. Would you like to see the new tomb we've carved for King Obotus? The facade alone took 3 years to complete. As they walk through the city, past workshops where craftsmen shape pottery and jewelry, past gardens where exotic plants grow in carefully rationed water, past chambers where scribes keep meticulous records of every transaction, the merchant begins to understand something profound. This isn't just a trading post. This is a civilization that has achieved something remarkable. They've created abundance in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Not just survival, but genuine prosperity. Not just function, but beauty. Not just temporary success, but something that feels eternal. Tell me, the merchant asks, how do you do it? How do you make the desert bloom? Aretas considers the question as they pause beside one of the great cisterns, its walls carved with geometric patterns that catch and play with the light. Water, certainly, and trade routes. But more than that, we've learned to think in centuries, not seasons. Every channel we carve, every chamber we hollow out, every facade we perfect, we build it to last forever. My great-grandfather began work on some of the chambers we still use today. My great-grandson will probably finish projects I'm starting now. We don't build for ourselves alone. We build for all the generations that will come after us. This long-term thinking, this willingness to invest in projects whose benefits might not be seen for generations, was perhaps the Nabataeans' greatest achievement. In a world where most people focused on immediate survival, they had learned to plan for posterity, and it showed in everything they touched. Their water management systems were designed not just to meet current needs, but to support a much larger population. Their storage facilities were built to accommodate trade volumes that wouldn't be reached for centuries. Their architectural projects reflected an absolute confidence that Petra would endure, that it was worth investing in beauty for its own sake. But perhaps most remarkably, they achieved this while maintaining their essential character as a people. Many civilizations that grow wealthy become soft, losing the qualities that made them successful in the first place. The Nabataeans managed to become sophisticated without losing their desert toughness. cosmopolitan without abandoning their cultural identity. They learned Greek and Aramaic to deal with foreign merchants, but they continued to speak their own Arabic dialect among themselves. They adopted architectural styles from Egypt and Rome and Persia, but they adapted them to their own aesthetic sensibilities. They welcomed traders from every corner of the known world, but they never forgot that their strength came from their unique understanding of desert survival. This balance between openness and identity, between adaptation and authenticity, is something we still struggle with today. How do you participate in a global economy without losing your cultural soul? How do you welcome foreign influences without being overwhelmed by them? The Nabataeans seem to have found an answer, at least for a while. Walking through Petra today, you can see evidence of this balance everywhere. A tomb facade that combines classical Greek columns with distinctly Arabian geometric patterns. A temple that shows Persian influences but is built according to Nabataean engineering principles. Inscriptions in multiple languages, but always including Nabataean Aramaic alongside the others. They were creating something new under the sun, a truly international culture that remained rooted in local traditions. Petra became a place where a merchant from Rome could feel welcome, where a trader from India could find familiar spices and fabrics, where a Bedouin from the deep desert could still recognize the essential character of his people. And at the center of it all, the rose-red stone continued to be transformed. Each generation of craftsmen pushed the boundaries a little further, attempted slightly more ambitious projects, refined their techniques to achieve even greater precision and beauty. "Look at this," says a master carver to his students, running his hand over a section of carved frieze. "See how the stone seems to flow like water? How the leaves and flowers appear almost to move in the changing light. This is what happens when you don't just carve stone, when you make it sing." The students nod, but their eyes show the same mixture of awe and intimidation that students have felt throughout history when confronted with true mastery. How can they ever hope to achieve such skill? "Don't worry about matching this immediately," the master continues, reading their expressions. "Your great-grandfathers couldn't carve like this either. But they began. They made the first cuts, learned the basic techniques, passed them on to their children improved. Each generation builds on what came before. That's the secret, you see. Not individual genius, though we've had our share of that, but accumulated knowledge. Each craftsman adding something to the great conversation we're having with the stone. Each generation pushing the art a little further." And so the city grew. Not quickly, not haphazardly, but with the steady persistence of desert plants sending roots deep into stone. Each year brought new facades, new chambers, new refinements to the great water system. Each decade saw the completion of projects begun by men who had passed into memory. Each generation inherited not just techniques and tools, but an unshakable belief that what they were creating was worth any amount of effort. By the 1st century before Christ, Petra had become something unprecedented in the ancient world, a city that existed not because of military conquest or agricultural abundance, but because its citizens had made themselves indispensable to the flow of global commerce. Roman legions might conquer territories through force of arms, but they still needed Nabataean guides to safely cross the desert. Egyptian merchants might control the ports of the Red Sea, but they still depended on Nabataean caravans to transport goods inland. Arabian incense producers might control the source of frankincense, but they needed Nabataean expertise to get their products to market. The Nabataeans had achieved something that every entrepreneur dreams of. They had created a monopoly based not on force or law, but on their superior ability to provide an essential service. And they had built this monopoly not in some easily copied industry, but in the extraordinarily demanding business of desert logistics. Any fool with an army could conquer a city, but it took generations of accumulated knowledge to successfully guide caravans across hundreds of miles of trackless desert, to maintain water supplies in one of the world's most arid regions, to create secure storage and trading facilities in landscape that seemed to offer nothing but hostile stone. The Nabataeans had turned disadvantage into advantage, had made their harsh homeland into their greatest asset. The very qualities that made the Petra region seem uninhabitable to outsiders, the extreme aridity, the rugged terrain, the apparent lack of resources, these became the foundations of Nabataean power. But empires, as the Nabataeans would eventually learn, are fragile things. Success breeds its own challenges. Wealth attracts attention from those who prefer taking to making, and the very trade routes that had brought prosperity to Petra were changing, shifting, opening new possibilities that might bypass the rose-red city entirely. Standing in Petra today, surrounded by these magnificent facades carved from living rock, it's easy to imagine that such beauty, such achievement, could last forever. The stone itself encourages this illusion. It seems so permanent, so immune to the passage of time. But the Nabataeans were about to face their greatest challenge. Not sandstorms, or water shortages, or raiding tribes. These they had learned to handle. No, they were about to encounter something far more dangerous. The attention of Rome in the distance, beyond the rose-red cliffs, beyond the carefully maintained trade routes. Roman eagles were on the march. The legions that had conquered Gaul and Britain, that had crossed the Rhine and the Rubicon, were now turning their attention to the wealthy desert kingdoms of the East and Rome. Unlike the various raiders and competitors the Nabataeans had dealt with before, wasn't interested in partnership. Rome didn't want to share in the wealth of the incense trade. Rome wanted it all. But tonight, let us not think of endings, but of achievements. Let us dream of Petra in its golden age, when the city hummed with activity from dawn to dusk, when caravans arrived daily, their camels loaded with treasures from the ends of the earth, when the sound of chisels on stone created a constant, rhythmic music that spoke of human ambition made manifest in rose-red rock. Dream of the craftsmen, working by lamplight in chambers deep within the cliffs, their hands guided by knowledge passed down through generations. Of the merchants, bargaining in a dozen languages in the shadow of monuments that defied belief. Of the children, growing up surrounded by beauty so extraordinary that they came to believe such magnificence was simply the natural state of the world. Dream of water flowing through channels cut by hands that understood the precious nature of every drop, of gardens blooming in the desert, tended by people who had learned to make abundance from scarcity, of festivals and celebrations, of music echoing through stone corridors, of a civilization that believed the hardest places on earth could be transformed into something magnificent through patience, skill, and the simple refusal to accept that anything was impossible. For tomorrow, we'll discover how this impossible dream faced its greatest test, how the masters of the desert crossroads prepared to meet the greatest military machine the ancient world had ever seen, how rose-red stone would witness the collision between two very different ideas about what it means to build an empire. But tonight, let Petra live in its glory. Let the city carved from dreams continue its eternal conversation with the desert wind. What treasures await us in the tombs and temples we have yet to explore? Have you ever stood in a place where you could almost hear the echoes of ancient prosperity? Where the very stones seemed to whisper stories of wealth and wonder, of merchants and monarchs, of a time when impossible dreams had become magnificent reality. This is Petra at its zenith, the first century of our common era, when the rose-red city had become not just a trading post, not just a marvel of engineering, but something far more precious, the beating heart of a world where East met West, where cultures blended like colors in the desert sunset, where human achievement had reached heights that would not be seen again in this region for over 1,000 years. Picture, if you will, the dawn breaking over Petra on a day in the year 50 of our era. The morning light catches the great facades just so, transforming the carved stone into something that seems to glow from within. The Treasury, Al-Khazneh, stands magnificent in the early light, its Corinthian columns casting precise shadows on the courtyard below. But this is no longer the isolated desert sanctuary of earlier centuries. The plaza before the Treasury bustles with activity. Merchants from Alexandria examine bolts of silk that have traveled the length of the known world. Spice traders from India display their aromatic treasures on carpets spread across the pink sandstone. Roman officials, their togas a stark white against the rose-red stone, conduct the careful diplomacy that keeps the trade flowing. And there, moving through this cosmopolitan crowd with the easy confidence of someone in her own domain, walks Queen Shakalat II. Her name means beautiful in the Nabataean tongue, and the ancient historians tell us she was indeed remarkable, not just for her appearance, but for her intelligence, her diplomatic skill, and her absolute devotion to Petra's continued prosperity. She pauses beside one of the great water channels, its carved sides worn smooth by centuries of desert floods channeled and controlled. A group of Roman engineers has been examining the system, their faces showing a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. "Remarkable," one of them murmurs to his companion. "We've conquered half the world, but I've never seen water management like this. How do they do it?" Queen Shakulat overhears, and her smile carries just a hint of pride. "Patience, honored guests. We think not in seasons, but in centuries. This channel you admire was begun by my great-great-grandmother, finished by my grandfather, refined by my father, and tomorrow, my children will probably improve it further still." The Romans exchange glances. In their world, engineering projects are completed within a few years or abandoned. The idea of multi-generational construction, of families dedicating their entire existence to perfecting a single system, is foreign. But then, almost everything about Petra is foreign to Roman sensibilities. And that's precisely what makes it so valuable. You see, by the 1st century, Petra had become something unprecedented in the ancient world, a truly international city. Not international in the way Rome was, through conquest and imposed uniformity, but international through invitation and mutual benefit. Here, diversity wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated as a source of strength. Walk through the markets of Petra during this golden age, and you'd hear a dozen languages spoken within a single street. Nabataean Arabic, certainly, the musical tongue of the city's founders. But also Greek, the language of philosophy and learning. Aramaic, the common tongue of trade across the Middle East. Latin, increasingly important as Roman influence grew. Persian, spoken by merchants from the great empire to the east, and stranger languages too. The clicking tongues of traders from distant Africa. The melodious speech of Indians who brought precious gems and exotic spices. Even, some say, the mysterious sounds of merchants who claimed to come from the very edge of the world, from a land called Serica where silk grew on trees. "Peace be upon you." Friend Malaku calls out a merchant named Wabalahai, gift of God in Nabataean. He's greeting a colleague whose camels have just arrived from the south, loaded with the precious frankincense that remains Petra's most important trade good. "And upon you, peace," Malaku replies, sliding down from his riding camel with the fluid grace of someone who has spent most of his life in the saddle. The journey was eventful. Roman patrols along the Red Sea route. "They're becoming more interested in our business." Wabalahai frowns. "The Romans have been allies, of sorts, for decades now. Petra pays tribute. Rome provides protection from raiding tribes and competing kingdoms. It's been a profitable arrangement for everyone. But lately, the Roman interest in Nabataean trade routes has seemed less like partnership and more like evaluation." "Come," Wabalahai says, guiding his friend toward one of the great carved chambers where goods can be stored safely. "Let's see what treasures you've brought us. And perhaps, we can discuss these Roman patrols over some wine." Good wine helps clarify complex thoughts. As they walk deeper into the city, past workshops where craftsmen create jewelry and pottery that will find their way to markets across the Mediterranean, past gardens where exotic plants grow in carefully rationed water, past the great cisterns that make all of this abundance possible. They're participating in something remarkable. They're living through what historians would later recognize as Petra's golden age, that brief, shining moment when everything came together perfectly, when the city's location at the crossroads of ancient trade routes was perfectly positioned to take advantage of the Roman Empire's unprecedented prosperity, when their water management systems had reached peak efficiency, when their craftsmen had achieved a level of skill that transformed utilitarian objects into works of art. But golden ages, by their very nature, are fragile things. Picture Queen Shakulat in her private chambers that evening, high up in one of the great carved palaces that crown the cliffs around Petra. The room is illuminated by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on walls, decorated with frescoes showing scenes of prosperity and abundance, caravans arriving laden with goods, gardens blooming in the desert, the great facades of the city gleaming in eternal sunlight. But the queen's expression is troubled as she studies a scroll that arrived that day from Damascus. Her husband, King Aretas IV, called Aretas the Great by his people, looks up from his own reading. More reports from the northern routes. He asks quietly. She nods. The Romans are building roads, beloved. Not just any roads, but sea roads. They're developing shipping routes that bypass our desert paths entirely. Goods that once had to travel through Petra can now go by ship from India to Egypt, then overland to Alexandria and across the Mediterranean to Rome. Aretas sets down his scroll, a report from one of their agents in Rome, and moves to stand beside his queen at the window. Below them, the city spreads out in the moonlight, its carved facades silvery in the pale light, its water channels catching and reflecting the stars. "We knew this day would come eventually," he says, though his voice carries the weight of someone who had hoped it would come much later. The question is, what do we do about it? This was the central challenge facing Petra at the height of its power. They had built their entire civilization around control of the desert trade routes. But technology and politics were conspiring to make those routes less crucial with each passing year. Roman naval technology had advanced to the point where large cargo ships could safely traverse the Red Sea and Indian Ocean routes that had once been prohibitively dangerous. The monsoon winds that Nabataean traders had learned to read and use were now being harnessed by Roman and Indian sailors to carry goods directly from the spice gardens of the east to the ports of Egypt at the same time. The Roman Empire's own expansion was creating new overland routes through territories that Rome controlled directly. Why pay Nabataean middlemen when you could move goods through your own provinces, taxed by your own officials, protected by your own legions? The writing, as they say, was on the wall, or rather, it was on the scrolls that arrived daily in Petra, carried by agents and merchants who reported the same troubling trend. The great trade routes that had made the rose-red city rich were slowly, inexorably, being redirected. But here's what's remarkable about the Nabataeans during this crisis. They didn't panic. They didn't abandon their long-term thinking in favor of short-term, desperate measures. Instead, they did what their people had always done best. They adapted. If we cannot control all the trade routes, Queen Shakulat says to her council of advisors, then we must make ourselves indispensable in other ways. What does our queen suggest? Asks the elderly master builder, a man whose weathered hands have carved some of Petra's most magnificent facades. Luxury, she replies simply, not just as merchants, but as creators. The Romans may be able to bypass our trade routes, but they cannot replicate what we create here. Our craftsmen, our artists, our architects, these are treasures that cannot be shipped around us. And so began what might be called Petra's artistic renaissance. If they could no longer be indispensable as middlemen, they would make themselves irreplaceable as artisans. The same patient, multi-generational approach that had created their water management systems was now applied to perfecting crafts that would make Petra's goods sought after across the known world. Master jewelers began experimenting with techniques borrowed from Indian and Persian craftsmen, creating pieces that combined traditional Nabataean geometric patterns with exotic materials and foreign methods. The result was jewelry so distinctive, so beautiful, that wealthy Romans would pay premium prices for pieces that could only have been made in Petra. Pottery workshops that had once focused on practical storage vessels began producing works of art, vases and bowls, decorated with painted scenes showing the unique landscape of Petra. The rose-red stone transformed into ceramic that captured the very essence of the desert's beauty, and the stone carvers. Oh, the stone carvers reached heights of artistry that still take your breath away today. Look at the monastery, Adair, carved during this period. It's not just a building, it's a symphony in stone. Every line perfectly proportioned, every surface alive with decoration. The whole massive structure somehow managing to seem both monumentally solid and gracefully light. Watch the stone. The master carver tells his apprentices as they work on a delicate frieze. See how the morning light plays across this surface? We're not just carving decoration, we're carving light itself. We're making the stone sing with shadows. The young men nod, though their faces show the concentration of students grappling with concepts that push the boundaries of their understanding. How do you carve light? How do you make stone sing? Think of it this way. The master continues, setting down his own tools to gesture at the work in progress. A Roman engineer builds a column to hold up a roof. That's all. Function. But we build columns that hold up roofs and lift spirits, that cast shadows that change throughout the day, that remind everyone who sees them that human beings are capable of creating beauty that will outlast empires. This philosophy, that everything worth doing was worth doing beautifully, became Petra's answer to changing economic circumstances. They couldn't control the trade routes the way they once had, but they could create goods so beautiful, so distinctive, that people would seek them out regardless of transportation costs. And it worked, at least for a while. Petra's reputation for artistic excellence spread throughout the Roman world. Wealthy patricians in Rome and Alexandria began commissioning works from Nabataean craftsmen. Merchants who might have bypassed Petra for purely commercial reasons began making special trips to acquire the unique goods available nowhere else. The Rose-Red City had successfully reinvented itself, transforming from a trading hub into a center of luxury production. The same caves and chambers that had once stored frankincense and silk now housed workshops where master artisans created treasures that would be prized across the civilized world. But there was something else happening during this period, something perhaps more important than economic adaptation. The Nabataeans were creating a legacy that would outlast any shift in trade routes or change in political circumstances. You see, they had begun to understand that their greatest creation wasn't any individual building or artifact. It was Petra itself, the entire city, with its carved facades and engineered water systems and accumulated artistic achievements, was becoming something unprecedented in human history. We are creating, King Aretas tells his son and heir during one of their evening walks through the city, a place that will teach people about beauty and patience and the rewards of thinking in centuries rather than seasons. Long after our trade routes have been forgotten, long after our political alliances have crumbled, Petra will remain as a testament to what human beings can achieve when they refuse to accept limitations. The prince, his name is Rabble, meaning God heals, listens carefully. At 25, he's already shown himself to be a capable administrator and a skilled diplomat. But tonight, walking through the moonlit streets of his inheritance, he's learning something deeper about leadership. Father, he asks quietly, are you saying that we're building this city for people we'll never meet? For generations yet unborn? That's exactly what I'm saying, my son. The caravans that made us wealthy will eventually find other routes. The Roman Empire that protects us will eventually fall. All empires do. But these facades, these chambers, these systems we've carved from the living rock, these will endure. It was a profound shift in thinking, and one that would define Petra's final flowering. Instead of building for immediate utility or even current beauty, the Nabataeans began building for eternity. They were creating a message in stone, a communication with the future that would outlast any political or economic upheaval. And the message was simple but revolutionary. Human beings, working with patience and skill and vision, can create beauty that transcends time itself. They can take the rawest materials, desert stone and precious water, and transform them into something that will inspire wonder for millennia. This is why walking through Petra today still has the power to move people to tears. It's not just the beauty of the facades, remarkable as they are. It's the recognition that we're witnessing a conversation between the past and the future, with ourselves as the temporary custodians of something precious and irreplaceable. Every carved flower in these stone walls represents hours of patient labor by craftsmen who knew they would never see the final result of their work. Every channel in the water system was positioned with care by engineers who were solving problems for generations yet unborn. Every facade was designed to catch the light just so, creating moments of beauty for visitors who wouldn't arrive for 2,000 years. But even as they built for eternity, the Nabataeans couldn't entirely escape the pressures of their changing world. The Romans, their sometime allies and constant competitors, were becoming more insistent about direct control over the trade routes that remained profitable. Your Majesty, says the Roman envoy, his Latin accent carefully precise as he speaks the diplomatic Aramaic used for formal occasions. Caesar's patience grows thin. Petra's independence was tolerable when your city served Roman interests. But these new trade agreements with Parthia, these diplomatic missions to kingdoms that Rome considers unfriendly, Such activities call into question whether Nabatea remains a reliable ally. King Rabel, now ruling alone after his father's peaceful death, listens carefully. He's inherited not just a throne, but a delicate balance between independence and survival. Push too hard for autonomy, and Rome's legions will arrive to impose direct rule. Submit too completely, and Petra loses the very independence that makes it valuable to its trading partners. Honored ambassador, the king replies carefully. Petra has always been Rome's faithful friend. Our agreements with other kingdoms are purely commercial. We seek profit, not politics. Surely Caesar understands that trade requires flexibility and partnerships. But even as he speaks the diplomatic words, Rabel knows that the old arrangements are crumbling. Rome's tolerance for independent client kingdoms is waning. The empire wants direct control, standardized administration, uniform taxation. The very diversity and flexibility that make Petra valuable are becoming liabilities in Rome's increasingly centralized world. And yet, remarkably, this period of political pressure produced some of Petra's greatest artistic achievements. Perhaps sensing that their independence might not last forever, the Nabataeans threw themselves into creating monuments that would preserve their culture and achievements for posterity. The great temple complexes carved during Rabel's reign show a sophistication and ambition that surpass even the Treasury. The monastery, with its massive facade and intricate internal chambers, was clearly designed to impress visitors from across the known world. The elaborate tombs of the royal cemetery demonstrate a level of artistic refinement that would have been impossible just a generation earlier. It's as if they knew, somehow, that they were working against time. Not just the immediate political pressures from Rome, but something deeper, the end of an era when small, independent kingdoms could thrive through skill and strategic location alone. Master, asks a young apprentice, working late by lamplight on a particularly complex section of carved frieze. Why do we spend so much time on details that most people will never even notice? This flower I'm carving, it's so high up on the facade that visitors will barely be able to see it. The old craftsman pauses in his own work, considering the question. Because, child, we don't carve for the visitors alone. We carve for the stone itself, for the satisfaction of work done as well as it can possibly be done. And for people who might climb up here centuries from now, people with better ladders or different eyes, people who will appreciate details we can barely imagine. Every cut we make is both an act of faith and a gift to the future. We trust that someone, someday, will understand what we were trying to achieve. We trust that beauty matters, even if, especially if, it might outlast everything else we think important. This philosophy sustained the Nabataeans through what would turn out to be the final decades of their independence. While politicians maneuvered and merchants worried about changing trade routes, the craftsmen and artisans of Petra continued their patient work of transformation, stone by stone. Detail by detail, they were creating a legacy that would survive the collapse of kingdoms and the fall of empires. They were building in the only truly durable currency, beauty that speaks to something fundamental in the human spirit, and perhaps this was their greatest achievement. Not the wealth they accumulated or the political alliances they managed, but their absolute commitment to creating something larger than themselves. Something that would continue to inspire and astonish long after the immediate concerns of their era had been forgotten. Standing in Petra today, surrounded by facades that still glow rose-red in the desert sun, it's impossible not to feel the presence of those ancient craftsmen. Their hands shaped every curve, their eyes guided every line. Their spirits infused every surface with a love of beauty that transcends time itself. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, dream of Petra in its golden age. Dream of workshops where master craftsmen pass their secrets to devoted apprentices. Of markets where the rarest treasures of the ancient world change hands in the shadow of impossible architecture. Of water flowing through channels carved with loving precision. Sustaining gardens that bloom in defiance of the desert's harsh embrace. Dream of a people who understood that true wealth isn't measured in gold or gems, but in the legacy of beauty and wisdom we leave for those who come after us, who knew that the greatest monuments aren't built to celebrate conquest, but to honor the human capacity for patient, loving work that transforms the world one small piece at a time, for tomorrow. We'll witness the final test of everything the Nabataeans had built. We'll see how their rose-red city faced the greatest challenge any independent kingdom could face, the direct attention of Rome itself. We'll discover whether stone can indeed outlast empire, whether beauty truly transcends politics, whether dreams carved in rock can survive the harsh realities of a changing world. But tonight, let Petra live in its glory. Let the impossible city continue its eternal dance with light and shadow, its timeless conversation between human ambition and the patient stone that makes all dreams possible. What secrets still lie hidden in the chambers, yet to be opened? There are moments in history when the world holds its breath, when the future balances on the edge of a decision, and everyone, from kings to commoners, from conquerors to the conquered, senses that something fundamental is about to change forever. For Petra, that moment came on a spring morning in the year 106 of our common era. The rose-red city woke as it had for centuries, to the sound of water flowing through ancient channels, to the ring of chisels on stone, to the gentle murmur of merchants preparing for another day of trade. But on this particular morning, something was different on the horizon. Barely visible through the heat shimmer of the desert, dust clouds were approaching. Not the familiar dust of caravans, but something more ominous, the disciplined dust of Roman legions on the march. Picture King Rabble II, standing on the highest terrace of his palace, carved deep into the living rock of one of Petra's most commanding cliffs. At 63, he had ruled the Nabataean kingdom for 27 years, guiding his people through the challenges of a changing world with the same patience and long-term thinking that had built the city itself. His weathered hands rest on stone that his own artisans had carved and polished to perfection. Below him, Petra spreads out in the morning light, the great facades catching the sun just so, the water channels gleaming like silver threads, the workshops and homes and temples that represent 4 centuries of accumulated achievement. "Your Majesty," says his chief advisor, approaching with the careful step of someone bearing heavy news. "The Roman scouts have reached the outer valleys. Governor Cornelius Palma requests an audience." Rabble nods slowly. They had all known this day would come eventually. The last independent Nabataean king closes his eyes briefly, feeling the warm desert wind on his face, breathing in the scent of his city, stone dust and incense, water and desert flowers, the accumulated fragrances of a civilization that had learned to make beauty from the harshest materials on earth. "Send word that King Rabble will receive the Roman governor in the great council chamber," he says quietly, "with all the honors due to a distinguished guest." The words carry weight that goes far beyond diplomacy. Both men understand what this audience will likely bring: the end of Nabataean independence, the transformation of their kingdom into just another Roman province. The question is not whether this will happen, but how it will happen, whether it will be accomplished through negotiation or force, whether Petra will be preserved or altered to suit Roman preferences. You see, by 106 CE, Rome had run out of patience with independent kingdoms on its borders. The empire had grown too large, too complex, to tolerate the diplomatic niceties that had once made client states like Nabatea valuable. Caesar Trajan, the current emperor, was a soldier's soldier, a man who preferred clear lines of authority to the subtle negotiations required for managing autonomous allies. And Nabatea, for all its wealth and diplomatic skill, had committed the ultimate sin in Roman eyes. It had outlasted its usefulness. The sea routes that now carried much of the eastern trade had made Petra's desert monopoly less crucial. The kingdom's very independence had become more of a liability than an asset. But there was something else at work, something that perhaps even the Romans didn't fully understand. Petra represented a different way of thinking about civilization itself. Where Rome built through conquest and standardization, Petra had grown through patience and adaptation. Where Rome imposed its will on the landscape, Petra had worked with the natural world to create something unprecedented. The great council chamber where King Rabble would meet Governor Palma was itself a masterpiece of Nabataean engineering and artistry. Carved directly into the cliff face, its walls were decorated with frescoes showing the history of Petra, caravans arriving laden with treasures, craftsmen at work, the great water systems that made life in the desert possible. But perhaps most significantly, The chamber was designed to showcase the acoustic properties of the carved stone. Every word spoken here would resonate with perfect clarity, a reminder that in Nabatea, even the most utilitarian spaces were created with an eye for beauty and function combined. "Your Majesty honors me with this reception," Governor Palma says as he enters, his Latin accent careful as he speaks the diplomatic Aramaic that serves as the common language for such occasions. Behind him, a small retinue of Roman officers stands at respectful attention, their military bearing a stark contrast to the flowing robes and patient demeanor of the Nabataean court. Rabble inclines his head graciously. "Governor Palma is welcome in Petra. Our city has always valued friendship with Rome." What follows is a conversation that had been rehearsed in various forms, countless times throughout history. The dance of absorption, how a great empire acquires a smaller kingdom without unnecessary bloodshed, and how that kingdom tries to preserve as much of its identity and autonomy as possible in the transition. Caesar Trajan sends his greetings to the noble King Rabble, Palma continues, and his admiration for the remarkable achievements of the Nabataean people. "This city is truly a wonder of the world. We are pleased that Rome appreciates what we have built here," Rabble replies. Petra has always been a bridge between worlds, a place where different peoples can meet in peace and mutual benefit. Indeed, and it is precisely because of this strategic importance that Caesar believes Petra would benefit from more direct Roman involvement in its governance. And there it is, the polite phrasing that masks a fundamental reality. Rome isn't asking for Nabataean cooperation. It's informing the last Nabataean king that his kingdom will now become the Roman province of Arabia Petraea, with Petra as its capital. But here's what's remarkable about this moment, and what tells us so much about both civilizations involved. There's no ultimatum delivered at sword point, no threat of legions storming the carved facades. Instead, there's a negotiation, a careful working out of terms that will preserve as much as possible of what makes Petra valuable. You see, the Romans, for all their military might, weren't barbarians. They understood that Petra's wealth came not just from its location, but from the expertise of its people, the sophistication of its systems, the beauty that attracted merchants and visitors from across the known world. Destroy that, and you're left with nothing but empty caves, inexpensive to maintain desert. "Governor," King Rabble says after a long pause, "if Petra is to become part of the Roman world, what assurances can you give regarding our traditions, our craftsmen, the systems that have made this city prosperous?" It's a crucial question. Throughout the ancient world, Roman absorption often meant Roman standardization. Local customs gave way to Roman law. Local architectures were replaced with Roman temples and forums. Local economies were restructured to serve Roman interests above all else. His Majesty asks wise questions, Palma replies, "Caesar has instructed me to emphasize that Rome values diversity of approach. The systems that make Petra profitable will be preserved. The craftsmen who create goods prized throughout the empire will continue their work. The beauty that makes this city unique will be protected. However," and here the governor's voice grows slightly more formal, "Rome must ensure that such systems serve not just local interests, but the broader good of the empire. Taxation will be standardized. Trade agreements will be subject to Roman approval, and certain administrative changes will be necessary to ensure efficient governance." King Rabble nods slowly. He's hearing both promise and threat in carefully measured proportions. Petra will be preserved, but it will also be transformed. The Rose-Red City will continue to exist, but as a Roman city first, a Nabataean one second. What was happening in that carved chamber was more than a political negotiation. It was a collision between two fundamentally different approaches to civilization. The Romans had built the largest empire in human history through military excellence and administrative efficiency. They thought in terms of provinces and legions, of standardized systems that could be replicated across vast distances. The Nabataeans had built something smaller, but perhaps more remarkable, a civilization that grew organically from the landscape itself, that worked with natural systems rather than against them, that valued beauty and craftsmanship as highly as military or economic success. Could these two approaches coexist? Could Roman efficiency preserve Nabataean artistry? Could imperial standardization accommodate local innovation? The answer, as it would unfold over the following decades, was complicated. Yes and no. Some things were preserved, others were lost. Some traditions continued, others were transformed beyond recognition. "Your Majesty," says Queen Gamilat, Rabble's wife, as they walk through their private gardens that evening. The formal negotiations have concluded for the day, but the real decisions are made in moments like these, in the quiet conversations between people who must live with the consequences of their choices. The Romans, they speak of preservation, but their very presence changes everything. "Look," she gestures toward the great facades visible from their terrace. "Even now, I can see their engineers examining our water systems, their architects studying our carved chambers. They're not just annexing our kingdom, they're trying to understand how we do what we do." Rabble follows her gaze, watching tiny figures moving through the city below. And perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing. Beloved, we've always believed that knowledge should be preserved, passed on. If Roman interest ensures that our achievements survive, but at what cost? She asks quietly. If our techniques become Roman techniques, if our artistry becomes Roman artistry, what happens to us, to the people who created all this? It's a question that goes to the heart of cultural preservation. How do you maintain identity while adapting to changed circumstances? How do you preserve tradition while embracing necessary innovation? The Nabataeans had always been master adapters, but this challenge was unlike any they had faced before. In the days that followed, as the formal transfer of authority took place, the people of Petra watched with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity as their world began to change. Roman administrative methods were efficient, certainly. Tax collection became more systematic. Trade agreements were standardized and simplified. Legal disputes were resolved more quickly, but there were losses too. Subtle ones at first, but real nonetheless. The easy informality that had characterized Nabataean governance gave way to Roman hierarchy. The flexible, adaptive approaches that had served the kingdom well were replaced by procedures designed to work across vast distances and diverse populations. "Master," asks a young stone carver, "the new Roman administrator says our facades are provincial and that we should learn to carve in the proper classical style. What does this mean for us?" The old master craftsman, the same one who had been teaching apprentices for decades, sets down his tools and considers the question carefully. "It means, young one, that we must be even more careful to preserve what we know. If Roman tastes favor different styles, we must learn those styles. But we must never forget our own. Remember, stone has a long memory. The techniques we've developed over centuries, the understanding we've gained about working with this particular sandstone, the aesthetic principles that make our work distinctive, these things live in our hands and hearts, not in administrative proclamations. But what if they forbid us to work in our traditional ways? Then we work in Roman ways by day, and we teach our children Nabataean ways by night. We adapt, as we always have, but we remember, always remember, what made us who we are. This quiet resistance, not political or military, but cultural and artistic, would characterize Petra's response to Roman rule. The city would become Roman in administration and law, but it would remain stubbornly Nabataean in its heart. And remarkably, for the first few decades at least, this arrangement worked. Roman investment in infrastructure improved the city's water systems and trade facilities. Roman roads connected Petra more efficiently to markets throughout the empire. Roman protection provided security that allowed commerce and craftsmanship to flourish at the same time. The Romans discovered that Petra's traditional ways of doing things often worked better than their standardized alternatives. Nabataean water management proved superior to Roman hydraulic engineering in this particular environment. Nabataean trade relationships, built on centuries of trust and mutual benefit, proved more valuable than Roman commercial contracts. Picture Petra in the year 125, nearly 2 decades after the Roman annexation. The city has grown larger and more prosperous than ever before. Roman investment has funded new construction projects, expanded the water systems, and improved connections to markets throughout the empire. But walk through the streets, and you'll still hear Nabataean Arabic alongside Latin and Greek. Visit the workshops, and you'll still see craftsmen creating goods in traditional styles alongside Roman-influenced pieces. Look at the new facades being carved, and you'll see a fascinating blend: classical Roman proportions combined with Nabataean decorative sensibilities. Uncle Malaku, says a young woman named Dushra, named after the great Nabataean god. Tell me about the old days, before the Romans came. Was it really so different? The old merchant smiles, settling back in his chair in the courtyard of his house. Around them, fountains play with water channeled through systems that predate Roman rule by centuries. Above them, carved facades glow in the afternoon sun, their rose-red stone as beautiful as ever. Different? Yes and no, child. The work continues. We still carve stone, still channel water, still create beautiful things. The city is still here, still magnificent. But he pauses, searching for words to capture something subtle but important. But the soul of it has changed, hasn't it? She asks perceptively. Perhaps, or perhaps not changed, but shared. We're no longer building only for ourselves, only according to our own vision. We're building for the empire now, as part of something larger. That brings opportunities, certainly, but also responsibilities, compromises. This conversation, repeated in countless variations throughout Roman Petra, captures something essential about cultural transition. Nothing disappears overnight. Nothing is preserved unchanged. Instead, there's a gradual blending, an evolution that creates something new while, hopefully, preserving the best of what came before. And for a while, it seemed as though this hybrid approach might succeed indefinitely. Roman Petra thrived for several centuries, maintaining its position as an important trade center while developing new roles as a tourist destination, even ancient. Romans were fascinated by the carved city and a center for specialized craft production, but there were forces at work beyond anyone's control. The same technological and economic changes that had made Roman annexation inevitable were continuing to reshape the world. Trade routes were shifting again, new cities were rising, and old ones were finding their purposes challenged or obsolete. More subtly, but perhaps more importantly, the very success of Roman integration was gradually eroding what made Petra unique. As Nabataean techniques spread throughout the empire, as traditional knowledge became standardized and systematized, as local innovations were absorbed into imperial practice, the rose-red city began to lose its special character. Father, says a young Roman administrator to his predecessor, as they review reports from across their province. I don't understand these expense reports from the water maintenance crews in Petra. They're using techniques that aren't in any of our engineering manuals. The older man, who has spent decades learning to work with local systems, smiles wryly. That's because those techniques were developed here, over centuries of trial and error. They work better in this environment than our standard approaches. But surely we should standardize the procedures? Make them consistent with practices elsewhere in the empire. We could try, but I suspect we'd spend far more money maintaining water systems that weren't designed for this particular landscape, using approaches developed for different climates and different stone. Sometimes, my son, the local way is the local way for good reasons. This tension between imperial standardization and local expertise would play out across the Roman Empire for centuries. Sometimes local knowledge was preserved and valued. Sometimes it was lost in the name of administrative efficiency. Often, as in Petra, the result was a gradual compromise that preserved some elements while losing others to by the 4th century. Christian pilgrims were beginning to visit Petra, drawn by its connections to biblical history and its undeniable beauty. The rose-red city was adapting once again, finding new purposes as the old ones became less relevant. Byzantine Christian churches were carved into chambers that had once served Nabataean gods. New artistic styles began to influence the traditional stonework. Latin and Greek inscriptions appeared alongside the beautiful Nabataean Aramaic script that had once dominated the city's carved surfaces. This place, writes a Christian pilgrim in her diary, seems to exist outside of time. The stone faces glow like living things in the desert sun. The water still flows through channels cut by hands that lived before our Lord walked the earth. Walking here, I feel connected not just to the ancient peoples who built these wonders, but to something eternal, the human desire to create beauty that will outlast our brief lives. She's touching on something crucial about Petra's enduring appeal. Even as the city's political and economic significance declined, even as its population dwindled and its great facades began to show the effects of centuries of wind and sand, something essential remained: the vision that had motivated those first Nabataean chisel strikes, the understanding that human beings could create beauty that would transcend time. That vision continued to resonate with everyone who encountered it, and perhaps this was Petra's greatest victory over the forces that had seemed to threaten its existence. Political conquest, economic change, cultural transformation, these things had all happened, and the city had survived them all. Not unchanged, certainly, but not destroyed either. The rose-red stone continued to glow in the desert sun. The water systems continued to function, channeling precious moisture through passages carved by forgotten hands. The facades continued to inspire awe in everyone who saw them, regardless of their language or religion or political allegiance. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, dream of Petra during this long twilight of empire. Dream of a city that learned to bend without breaking, to adapt without losing its essential character. Of craftsmen who preserved ancient techniques while learning new ones. Of stones that continued to sing with beauty even as the world around them changed beyond recognition. Dream of the quiet heroism of cultural preservation, not the dramatic resistance of warriors, but the patient work of teachers and artists and craftsmen who understood that the most important victories are often the ones that happen slowly, over generations, in workshops and classrooms and family conversations. For tomorrow, we'll witness the final chapter of this remarkable story. We'll see how Petra faced its greatest challenge, not conquest or annexation, but the simple passage of time. We'll discover how a city carved from eternal stone could nearly disappear from human memory, and how it was reborn through the wonder of rediscovery. But tonight, let the rose-red city rest in its hard-won peace. Let it dream of all the hands that shaped it, all the eyes that marveled at it, all the hearts that understood its message about the power of human creativity to transcend the limitations of time and circumstance. What dreams do stones dream in their endless patience? There is a profound quietness that comes to places where great civilizations once thrived. Not the emptiness of abandonment, but something deeper, a listening silence, as if the very stones are holding their breath, waiting for the next chapter in their eternal story to begin. This is how Petra entered its longest sleep, not with catastrophe or conquest, but with the slow, almost imperceptible retreat that comes when the world simply moves on. When the great currents of history shift direction, leaving behind treasures that few remember and fewer still think to seek. Picture the rose-red city in the year 700 of our common era. 7 centuries have passed since Roman annexation, for centuries since the last great building projects were completed. The population has dwindled from tens of thousands to hundreds. Grass grows between the carved stones of once busy plazas. Sand accumulates in doorways that once welcomed merchants from across the known world. But the city is not dead. Not exactly. A few families still live among the great facades, their simple daily routines dwarfed by the monumental architecture that surrounds them. Water still flows through channels carved by ancestors they've never heard of. Children still play in the shadow of monuments they take for granted as natural features of their landscape. Grandmother asks a little girl named Zara, meaning flower in Arabic, why did the old ones make the rocks into faces? The elderly woman, perhaps one of the last people in the world who still remembers fragments of stories about Petra's glory days, looks up from the simple pottery she's shaping with techniques passed down through generations of forgotten masters. They believe, child, that beautiful things have souls, that if you make something beautiful enough, it will live forever, even after the people who made it have joined the great silence. Do you think it worked? The grandmother sets down her clay and looks around at the carved facades that rise on all sides. Their rose-red stone warm in the morning sun, their intricate details as sharp and clear as the day they were completed. Look around you, little flower. What do you think? This conversation, taking place in the gathering twilight of Petra's inhabited history, captures something essential about what happens when civilizations fade. The people may disappear, the purposes may be forgotten, the names may be lost to history, but the beauty remains. Patient, eternal, waiting to be why the year 1000. Even these last residents had moved on. drawn to more prosperous towns, or following nomadic patterns that took them far from the hidden valley where their ancestors had carved wonders from living stone. Petra entered what we might call its Great Meditation, a period of solitude that would last for nearly 8 centuries. But solitude is not abandonment. Not for a place like Petra. The desert had its own ways of caring for the rose-red city. Sand filled the lower levels of chambers, protecting delicate carvings from wind erosion. Flash floods, channeled through the ancient drainage systems, washed away accumulated debris while leaving the major structures intact. The dry climate preserved organic materials, wood, fabric, even papyrus scrolls that would have long since decayed in more humid environments. And perhaps most remarkably, the local Bedouin tribes never forgot that this place was special. They didn't know the full history, didn't understand the engineering marvels or the artistic achievements, but they recognized sacred space when they encountered it. They called it Al-Baida, the white place, or sometimes Al-Madras, the carved place. Their oral traditions preserved fragments of memory, stories of a great people who could make stone flow like water, tales of hidden treasures guarded by jinn and spirits, warnings about disturbing places where the ancestors still walked in the cool desert evenings. "Tell us again, grandfather," asks young Salim, as the Bedouin camp settles for the night at the edge of what had once been Petra's bustling commercial district. About the people who lived in the stone. The old tribesman adjusts his position beside the fire, his eyes reflecting flames that seem to dance in harmony with the carved facades visible in the moonlight beyond their camp. They were jinn, some say, or perhaps humans who learned the secrets of the jinn. They could speak to stone as we speak to camels. They could make water flow uphill. They built gardens in the desert and palaces in the cliffs. What happened to them? They became part of what they created. On quiet nights, if you listen carefully, you can still hear them. The sound of their tools on stone, the whisper of water through their channels, the murmur of their conversations carried on the desert wind. A contemplative pause. The boy shivers, but not with fear. With recognition, perhaps, of something that speaks to the deepest parts of human imagination. The understanding that some achievements are so profound, so beautiful, that they transcend the ordinary boundaries between past and present, between the living and the remembered. And so Petra waited. Through the rise and fall of Crusader kingdoms, through the expansion of Islamic civilization, through the Ottoman Empire's long dominance of the region, pilgrims occasionally stumbled upon fragments of the city, but they interpreted what they saw through the lens of their own cultures and beliefs. Medieval Islamic geographers wrote of mysterious ruins in the mountains of Jordan, describing facades carved by the hands of the angels and water systems built by Solomon himself. Crusader knights, seeking routes to the Holy Land, reported discovering temples of the pagans, decorated with devilish artistry that both fascinated and disturbed their Christian sensibilities. "Brother, Marcus," says a Frankish knight to his companion, as they shelter from a sandstorm in what had once been one of Petra's great council chambers, "look at these walls. The carvings seem to move in the lamplight. What manner of people could create such works?" "Heathens," the other replies, but his voice carries wonder as much as disapproval. "Yet, I cannot deny there is beauty here, a beauty that speaks to something beyond mere human craft." They spend the night surrounded by frescoes depicting gardens and festivals, their eyes gradually adjusting to see details that reveal the gentle nature of the people who had commissioned such art. No scenes of warfare or conquest, no glorification of violence or domination, only celebrations of beauty, prosperity, and harmony between human achievement and the natural world. "Perhaps," Marcus says quietly as dawn breaks and they prepare to continue their journey, "there were more ways than one to build something worthy of eternity." These brief encounters, scattered across centuries, kept alive a thread of awareness that something extraordinary lay hidden in the mountains of Jordan. The thread was thin, often broken for generations at a time, but it never disappeared entirely. And then, on that fateful day in 1812, Johann Ludwig Burckhardt followed that thread to its source and gave the world back one of its greatest treasures, but rediscovery, as Burckhardt quickly learned, was only the beginning. How do you share a wonder like Petra with a world that has forgotten such places could exist? How do you describe stone facades that seem to glow with inner light? How do you explain the emotional impact of walking through the sick and emerging into that first breathtaking view of the treasury? My words feel inadequate, Burckhardt writes in his journal, to convey the magnificence of what I have witnessed. I have traveled extensively, have seen the great monuments of Egypt and the classical ruins of Greece and Rome, but nothing has prepared me for this. It is as if I have discovered not just a lost city, but a lost way of understanding the relationship between human creativity and the divine. Word of Burckhardt's discovery spread slowly at first, then, with gathering momentum, other European explorers made the difficult journey to southern Jordan. Artists came to capture the rose-red facades in paintings and sketches. Scholars arrived to decipher the inscriptions and understand the engineering marvels. Each visitor struggled with the same challenge Burckhardt had faced: how to communicate the reality of Petra to those who had never seen it. The photographs that would eventually make this possible were still decades away. All they had were words, sketches, and their own inadequate attempts to describe experiences that seemed to transcend ordinary categories of description. It is, writes the artist David Roberts in 1839, as if someone took all the architectural achievements of the ancient world and concentrated them into a single canyon, then painted the whole thing in shades of rose and gold that no earthly pigments could hope to reproduce. But perhaps more importantly, these early visitors began the long process of understanding what Petra represented, not just as an archaeological curiosity or an artistic marvel, but as evidence of human capabilities that the modern world had somehow forgotten. The people who built this, observes the archaeologist Austen Henry Layard in 1865, possessed a kind of patience we seem to have lost. They thought in centuries rather than years, in generations rather than individual lifetimes. They understood that true achievement requires not just vision, but the willingness to begin projects that others will finish. This observation touches on something crucial about Petra's modern significance. As the industrial age transformed human relationships with time and place, as rapid change became the norm rather than the exception, Petra stood as a reminder of different possibilities. Here was evidence that human beings could create beauty designed to last forever, that communities could undertake projects whose benefits would only be fully realized by their great-grandchildren, that the harsh realities of survival, even in the desert, didn't necessarily preclude the pursuit of aesthetic excellence. By the early 20th century, Petra had become what we now call a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized as a treasure belonging not just to Jordan, but to all humanity. Archaeological teams from around the world began the patient work of excavation and preservation. Tourism infrastructure developed to allow visitors from across the globe to experience the rose-red city's wonders, but each development brought new challenges. How do you preserve ancient stone facades while allowing thousands of visitors to appreciate them? How do you maintain the mystery and majesty of Petra while providing the modern amenities that contemporary travelers expect? The greatest challenge, explains Dr. Fawaz Al-Khazneh, a modern Jordanian archaeologist working at Petra, is balancing access with preservation. We want people to experience what we've experienced, that moment of wonder when you first see the treasury, that sense of connection with ancient craftsmen who understood beauty in ways we're still learning to appreciate. But every footstep on these ancient stones, every photograph taken, every tour group that passes through, it all has impact. We're not just preserving buildings. We're preserving the ability of future generations to have their own moments of discovery, their own encounters with this extraordinary achievement. This work, patient, often invisible, requiring the same long-term thinking that built Petra in the first place, represents a new chapter in the rose-red city's story. Modern conservation techniques allow damaged facades to be stabilized and restored. Digital technology enables scholars to study details that would be impossible to examine directly. Sustainable tourism practices help ensure that the wonder of Petra can be shared without being diminished. But perhaps most importantly, Petra continues to teach. Every visitor who walks through the sick and emerges into that first stunning view of the treasury learns something about human potential. Every school group that hears the story of Nabataean water management gains insight into sustainable living in harsh environments. Every artist who attempts to capture the play of light on rose-red stone discovers something about the relationship between natural beauty and human creativity. "When I bring my children here," says Fatima, a local Jordanian guide whose family has lived in the region for generations, "I tell them the same thing my grandmother told me, that we are the guardians of something precious. Not owners, not conquerors, but guardians. These stones have stories to tell, but only if we listen carefully. They've survived armies and empires, earthquakes and floods, centuries of neglect and decades of tourism. They'll outlast us too, if we're wise enough to care for them properly." My youngest daughter asked me once why the old people made everything so beautiful. Why didn't they just carve simple caves for shelter and leave it at that? And I told her, because they understood something we sometimes forget, that we become like what we surround ourselves with. That beauty feeds the soul the way food feeds the body. That taking the time to create something magnificent is never wasted time. This wisdom, that beauty matters. That patience pays dividends across generations. That the effort to create something lasting is always worthwhile. Maybe Petra's greatest gift to the modern world, in an age of rapid change and short attention spans. The Rose-Red City stands as proof that some things are worth doing slowly and carefully. In a time of environmental crisis, Petra's sophisticated water management systems offer insights into sustainable living in challenging conditions. In an era when cultural differences often lead to conflict, Petra's successful blending of influences from across the ancient world suggests possibilities for harmony and mutual enrichment. Standing in Petra today, surrounded by facades that have glowed rose-red in the desert sun for nearly 2 millennia, it's impossible not to feel connected to something larger than immediate concerns. The craftsmen who carved these marvels faced their own challenges: political uncertainty, economic change, environmental limitations. Yet they chose to invest their time and skill in creating beauty that would outlast their own brief lives. They succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The Nabataean kingdom disappeared from political maps 15 centuries ago. The trade routes that made Petra wealthy shifted to bypass the rose-red city entirely. The languages once spoken in these carved chambers fell silent for nearly 1,000 years, but the beauty remains, patient, eternal, continuing its quiet conversation with everyone who encounters it. "Grandfather," asks little Omar, visiting Petra with his family from Amman, "how did they know their buildings would last so long?" His grandfather, a man whose weathered face shows the same patient wisdom that must have characterized ancient Nabataean elders, smiles as he considers the question. "I think, child, they didn't know. Not for certain, but they hoped. And they worked as if their hope were already certainty. They carved each detail as if it would indeed last forever. They planned each project as if their great-grandchildren would indeed complete it." A thoughtful pause. That's the secret, perhaps. Not knowing the future, but working for it anyway. Creating beauty not because you're certain it will endure, but because the act of creation itself is worthwhile. And so we come to the end of our journey through Petra's long story, though of course the story itself continues. Every morning, the rose-red stone catches the desert sun just as it did 2,000 years ago. Every evening, shadows play across carved facades with the same dramatic beauty that awed ancient merchants and modern tourists alike. The water systems still function, channeling precious moisture through passages cut by hands that understood the desert's harsh gifts. The great facades still inspire wonder, their perfect proportions and intricate details testament to human capabilities that transcend any single culture or era. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, carry with you the vision of Petra in all its phases. The patient carving of the first water channels, the excitement of discovering that stone could indeed be made to sing, the prosperity of the Golden Age, when the impossible city fulfilled its builders' wildest dreams, the dignity of adaptation under Roman rule, the quiet centuries of meditation in desert solitude, the joy of rediscovery and the ongoing work of preservation. Dream of the craftsman, working by lamplight in chambers deep within the rose-red cliffs, their hands guided by knowledge accumulated over generations. Dream of the engineers, calculating flows and pressures to make water obey their will in one of Earth's most demanding environments. Dream of the architects, understanding that true monuments are built in harmony with the landscape rather than in defiance of it. Dream of the merchants, arriving dusty and travel-worn to find beauty that made their long journeys worthwhile. Dream of the pilgrims, seeking connection with something larger than themselves and finding it carved in eternal stone. Dream of the children, growing up surrounded by magnificence so extraordinary they came to believe such beauty was the natural state of the world. Most of all, dream of the conversation that Petra continues to hold with everyone who encounters it. The quiet teaching that human beings, working with patience and vision and love for beauty itself, can create wonders that will inspire and instruct long after the immediate circumstances of their creation have been forgotten. For Petra's ultimate lesson is not about stone or water or ancient trade routes. It's about the human capacity to transcend the limitations of time and circumstance through the simple act of creating beauty that outlasts our brief individual lives that in a world that often feels temporary and fragile. Petra stands as proof that some things are indeed built to last forever, that patience is rewarded across generations, that the effort to create something magnificent is never wasted, even if, especially if, its greatest impact comes long after its creators have joined the great silence that surrounds all human endeavor. The rose-red city waits, patient as stone, ready to share its secrets with anyone willing to listen to what the ancient stones have to say about beauty, permanence, and the endless human desire to leave something lovely behind for those who come after. Sleep well, and dream of roses carved in eternal stone, glowing warm in desert sunlight, whispering stories that bridge the centuries between then and now, between what was and what might yet be.